So, I don't have too many prepared remarks, so what I'll try and do is give you some ideas and perspectives purely from a corporate world of living and breathing a world that is, for me, about 250,000 employees in total, of which I have about somewhere between 30 and 40,000, depends on, I don't know how many of you here ever deal with HR. Sometimes they tell me it's 30,000, sometimes they tell me it's 35, and sometimes they tell me something else. And then if I ask payroll, it's always 50,000. So I'm not sure what's going on. But anyway, jokes aside, purely a corporate world. You heard a wonderful couple that I know from before. I've seen their company and their growth. Totally different perspective. We operate roughly in about 150 different countries. So for us, and for me personally, my journey through honestly inclusive leadership, as we call it, or the world of inclusion, is not just, it's not just a story or as a leader, but for me it is something that I deeply, deeply believe in. And so when Suchitra told me, please show up, I said I will. That's kind of what happened. Just kidding. It's a major passion for me, and it is something, so I'll start with the first and foremost. All of us, as I hate sitting down, stand up. All of us grow up into leadership roles, into whatever we do. And we learn a lot of things. And people have asked me, who's your biggest mentor? You've done so well, what's happening? And I always tell them, I don't have a single person, I have so many. And the reason being, you pick the best things from everybody else. Because the simple reason being, and that is my first important thing for every woman in this room, first and biggest word to remember is you're unique. You are unique. Keep that word in mind. I'll come back to that in a second. So that's the first important word. And one such mentor, and no jokes aside, one such person that I look up to is Suchitra, and I'm not joking, and she knows that. And the reason, I've seen her now at work now, what, 8 years now, probably 9 years. I'm not sure I can do half what she does in a given day, probably in a year. That's no joke. So thank you. Thank you for having me here too. So coming back to that, so my first big ask, and I am one of those people 10 years ago probably, as I moved through senior ranks in the firm, started to believe in the fact that without an inclusive leadership role and a leadership team, I will not succeed. So don't take me wrong, I was selfish in the fact that I wanted to succeed. And in order to succeed, I said, if I have a team, which I did, by the way, when I first took over the operations here in 2008, we were a small operation. Today, you see our offices everywhere in Hyderabad. I'm sure you know. We've got, I don't know, probably 20,000. Again, I don't know what HR will tell me tomorrow, but depending on what they do, somewhere between some numbers. But jokes aside, here in Hyderabad, we've got a, in order to build any operation of any scale, of any world-class operation, for a very selfish interest, I said, I need an inclusive team. I need a team where I have equal number of women, at least equal number of women at the table in my executive, otherwise it's not going to work. So, in order to achieve that, like you said, the dynamics we have in India are a lot more. And like many of us, many of our folks who spoke before, I've had some of the wonderful pleasure of having some of the best women leaders to look up to, and I'm not joking. And I'll tell you, my first, one of the big things I'll always tell you, she's not here today, but a person that I always look up to, and I'll tell you why in a second, is, believe it or not, is both my mom and my wife. They're two different people. And the reason I say that is because you learn a lot from them. I'll start with a simple word. Being unique and being who you are is the first thing that you should remember. So every single time we talk about women empowerment, and we use a lot of E's, and we use a lot of acronyms. And trust me, I come from a world of consulting. We are the best at creating acronyms, which don't mean anything, by the way. But that's not the point. And we change it because by the time you get an understanding of what it is or you start defining it, we have to change it. Otherwise, how do we make money, right? But anyway, besides the point, The first and the biggest thing is every single woman in this room and every single person that you deal with, I'll ask you to believe in the fact. Before we talk of empowerment, before we talk of massive words of we are not being discriminated, we are this, we are that, take a step back. Start believing the word that you're unique. And that starts with early in the morning when you wake up, first thing in the morning, start believing that you are the best. When you go in with an attitude, and I'm not trying to criticize, I know I'm controversial half the time, I know I'm not political, which is probably why I don't run for political office, ever, because I'm sure there's enough videos about me saying all kinds of stupid things, but please try and understand, get up in the morning and start believing in yourself and say, you are the best. Now, every time you might start doubting yourself, are you the best? Right? This is a simple answer for that. You know what I do? Pick up that beautiful mobile phone in your hand and call your mother. I promise you, there's a lot of mothers in this room. Have you ever thought that your kids are not the best? So then think about this. What is in it that a mother can see in you that you can't see in yourself? So that brings up the first question, why are you doubting yourself? Why do you feel, and I tell my staff this all the time, especially my women staff, why do you think you are at any level below any man? I don't care who he is. Think about it. God has created you equal in terms of, for the sake of argument, say, from an intelligence standpoint, you're equal. But what you do have going for you is passion, is empathy. God has given you things that man does not have. Why don't you use it? That's step one. So believing in yourself and stop thinking of, I have an entitlement, I need something. Don't do that. Just believe in yourself and walk with confidence. So that's one. The second major controversial thing I'll tell you is, try to help other women. And I'm sorry to make this big point, because every time somebody, including someone like me who believes in that, tries to promote a woman, I hate to say it, there are more women pulling her down, whoever that person is. I am very sorry to say that. Try to do that. Or that it's been a very big concern of mine all the time, saying if I put my energy into something and they're not doing it, that's a problem. So do me a favor, support your other women. 3, hold your head high. You don't, and I think someone mentioned it about 10 minutes ago, don't question yourself each time and say, he's doing it. Men are by nature, they go talking about themselves. It's a default error in the gene, I'll tell you that. That's just a natural conversation. I can say that about myself. I'm probably the best equipped to say that. And especially the gene gets a little more unruly after a peg of alcohol or whatever. And then I have no idea what they talk about themselves. But keep in mind, the fact that they can walk up and talk, it's one thing that doesn't come inherently. And I know there are wonderful women in this room, there are wonderful leaders. Like I said, I have a lot of mentors. But to the folks that are normal, that are regularly coming up the stream, help them. Don't let them think in any which way that they're in any form, forget inferior, but anything less than absolutely superior in a room. I promise you, I will not be here today but for a few women in my life. And in return, I can tell you, I will never be a great leader without women in my life, at all levels. And that's very, very important. You know that. You believe in that. Right? So start with saying you are the best. Believe in that first. And take words of, I don't care what these words are, of discrimination and this and that. Trust me, I grew up as a brown-skinned, little puny guy in a white man's Deloitte. Talk about the word of, even today, I'll give you a classic example. So, as one of by far the senior most partners in a firm this big, I get the privilege of going to executive meetings and board meetings with some of the largest companies in the world, right? Naturally, because our clients are like the top 100 companies in the world. So I go into a boardroom, you know what happens? And don't take me wrong, I still try to wear a suit and a tie and a glass and everything else. The first single thing that they look at, everybody, and I swear to God, and I'm probably the most senior-most person walking into that room, the first thing I get, why is this brown IT programmer sitting here? I swear, and they think I'm tech support. And I'm not kidding you. And then I call it, I'll take it even further. 10 minutes into the conversation, we're talking of all kinds of stuff, and then everybody sitting in the room suddenly has to turn, at least my own team, has to turn to me and say, are you okay with this or not? Because I'm the person making the decision. And I swear to God, that's when every single person sitting in the room, and I call it the oh shit moment, that's when they realize, oh shit, this is not somebody who's here to support as a tech support. He's somebody who's actually the person in charge. And the only reason I bring that up is to tell you discrimination is in different forms. It's in all kinds of things. Think about it. Even I left the country 25 years ago and I came back running Indian operation, assuming I knew everything as an Indian, only to realize that the North never liked the South in my office. Because when you're out of the country, you get a different perspective of the country. Literally. And then I realized, then I sit with talent to think of recruiting strategy. And they're like, no, sir, they won't come from the North. I'm like, okay. Or they won't come from the East. Or people from Kerala will only go to Bangalore. They won't come to Hyderabad. I'm like, okay, get it. I thought I knew all this, but apparently I didn't. So all I'm saying is my point being, don't use that word. Take the word discrimination out of your dictionary. Take the word entitlement out of your dictionary. And just the only thing you need to remember is you are the best. If you believe in that every day, and I always tell my staff the same thing, I know I am the best. Now, if you don't believe that, that's your problem, not mine. Now, what that gives you, and I'll give you this word, what that gives you, yes, you might say arrogance. But it's not true arrogance. I'll ask you this question. Look at any strong leader in this world. What is the one thing you feel? They are confident. They are like the swan in a lake. Have you ever used that simile before? They're so calm and pristine that you see, but under the water, they are like completely messed up. That's what most leaders are. That confidence is what sometimes gets translated into arrogance. That's okay. You need that edge. So keep that in mind. When you walk up, be yourself. The reason I started with the word unique is do not try to copy somebody else. God created you unique. Your mother sees you unique. Why are you thinking of yourself as somebody else? Ask yourself the question every day. If you are confident, you walk up, and you feel pride in yourself, trust me, you walk with your chest spread out. You walk with confidence every single day. Now, having said that, I understand circumstances. The problem you have is what you handle on a given day. And I was not joking when I was using Chitra as an example. I can use my wife as an example. There is no way in hell I can handle half of what she does in a given day. Now, trust me, there are enough men in the world today that acknowledge that. Should there be more? Yeah, I think everybody should do that. But remember, if I flip it around, that is the advantage you hold. There is no way, there is no man in this room or anywhere in the world that can say they can multitask as even half the efficiency that you can. Where is that coming? That's confidence. That's what you need to believe in. That uniqueness of who you are. The moment you lose that and say, well, he's not doing this for me, or he's not doing that for me. I got a bad this thing. I'm not getting a performance review. I'm not doing this. Forget all that. Believe in yourself. Walk with confidence. Be yourself. You do that. Trust me, nothing is going to stop you. And if you feel, like I said, using those words, the two words that I told you to forget, look aside. There's enough going around. Don't worry about that. You choose to be there. You choose the occasion. Do that. I'll leave you with one word. Right from the first time, whether you believe in God or not, whoever it was that created human beings, he came down. He created two distinct genders. And then somewhere along the wonderful tradition that we as Indians hold, somewhere along the line, we defined language. And in language, in the original Urdu language as well, or original language, if you remember, we talk of pyar and love everything else. But if you realize, the only thing that has a special word is mother's love. We call it mamta. A father's love is never called anything other than a father's love. Don't take me wrong. It's not that I love my daughter less than my wife does, but that's different. So that is the uniqueness. And I don't know how else to articulate it. All I'm telling you is what you're unique and how good you are. Hold that up. And stop asking people for anything. Tell them what the hell to do. You do that, I'm sure you'll all be fine. So I'll stop right there. And I know, that's why I stopped. Any questions? You can shout, I guess. I can.
Somebody who's this industry senior, and on behalf of so many clients I have, and I'm not able to explain that dilemma that they go through, so I'm looking for your views on that. Here are so many women who have opportunities to only work in the night shift. In the IT and the IT segment, like there are a lot of women who are trainers, who start off young, doing very well, and then they get married, and then they have children, and but they continue to work in the night shift, and so it's not for a month. Years go by with the child not seeing the mom in the evening or in the nights, when after they come back from school. So they are in this dilemma. They like the job, they get their identity from that, they get the financial independence, but they do have this whole problem that they're not spending enough time with the child through the week. And during the weekends, what happens is they're still in the night shift kind of a thing, so even the weekends go by. So what is the advice would you give for women like them, because they're not getting opportunities in day shifts even if they want to?
No, that's fair. Everything I said doesn't apply to a good lot of the people I know. I get it. So my advice is, it is progressing, and I'll tell you, from 10 years ago to today, things are changing. So my first thing would be two questions. One, I'll take it a step further in your case. There are people who need that money as well, not just the job. Just so you know, I have employees like that they live for the whatever, 20 or 30,000 or whatever, the check. They need the check for their survival, because probably their husband's not doing any good or whatever. Not that that should be the criteria at all. Some are career oriented. My only suggestion I can tell you right now is find leaders that you can resonate with. And I can tell you, in today's corporate India, my personal experience, having lived through so many different corporates and talking to hundreds of employees, there are phenomenal leaders that will buy that. And we don't put that, so at least if you are with us, there is no way you're going to do that. You'll get the same job during a day shift, and we do that. We don't force anybody to go through anything of that kind. And I'm not talking great about our firm or anything, but I'm just using that as an example to say there is a huge number of corporates that actually believe in that right now. And is it easy? It's not. I don't have something of my back pocket to say, go do this. My first choice would have been quit, but that's not the, any day given a life choice between family and office, I will take family any day. That's a whole different conversation. And trust me, for a long part of my life, I forgot that. I'll tell you that. I was so focused on my job, like you said, for about 15 years that I forgot that I had a family. I'm glad they didn't leave, but now I'm realizing that. But I hope people don't do that. But in your case, that's the only answer I can give you. Unfortunately, it's going to take time. When you're talking of 1 billion people, it's going to take a little time. A good example, and a few generations have to pass. Because I'll give you my own parents. There's no way they will, anything that I'm saying right now, they can't even empathize with it. There's no chance. Of course, having said that, don't take me wrong. They educated and my sister did really well, but that's not the point. But the only answer I would have is find an alternative manager and or leader that actually can see that happen. Or, this is where I again come back to this, if there are women in good positions, try to support that. For some reason, I still feel that disconnect. between women itself. And I don't know if I'm controversial or wrong or whatever, but I see that disconnect. Because women with women managers seem to be doing a lot worse than women with men managers for some reason. I don't know why. I see that too many times. But that's the only answer I can tell you. It's a tough thing. I give you, especially call centers or any night shift stuff is painful. But as leaders, at least from my perspective, and I can talk for at least leaders at my level, we are thinking through that, at least trying to take some of it out. But balancing a family, a house, a husband, potentially, which is the highest maintenance, I get it, is not easy. Sorry, I get it. But that's the best answer I can give you. I'm sorry. I don't think I have a silver lining there. I don't think I can give you anything. The silver lining is the fact that it is moving that way.
Whatever we have heard today, a lot of said that less than 2% of the women hold leadership positions or they grow into leadership positions. So being in, having worked with so many corporates and being in this industry, 50,000 or 25,000, whatever the workforce that you have, just want to understand what are your thoughts about why women are only 2% in those leadership positions in the services sector?
That's a fair question. By the way, our official number in India is like 42,000 or something. Though I think we pay 50,000 people somewhere in payroll, but I think Shakti was here a little while. I should ask, why is ADP processing 50,000 paychecks on a yeah. I'm not sure why ADP processes 50,000 checks on a 42,000 base, but that is a different question. Correct. No, but here's my answer to your question. Why is it 2%? So I'll tell you, in my firm, for example, overall, and I'm very proud of this stat, we started this journey probably about 25 years ago now. Not in India necessarily, overall. And today, believe it or not, 34% of our partners are women. Both our CEOs are women. My boss is a woman. She's the CEO of the firm. And that is, I wouldn't say that is the general rule, but it is getting to be the rule. And the reason I say it's getting to be the rule is it takes a little time, which is why I said you need a few generations to shift. So I'll give you, in 2008, when I took over India, I had 0 women at the top. Absolutely 0 women. And I had 0 women even as senior managers, forget in my executive team, or for that matter, even as leaders. Today, I think we are a little already over 28 or 29% of our leadership is women. But what that needs is focus and commitment. So I don't know about 2% per se, but I know it's very low. I think it's going to take a little time. I will tell you that. And I think it's a combination of leaders recognizing that and 2, you recognizing yourself. That's what I meant to say. You've got to feel yourself. The moment you do that over the generations, I think it'll shift. Think about it. 2% of a population, the number of women who are actually in the workforce itself, you look at it 50 years ago, I'm sure was abysmal in India. My mom probably was one of the absolute aberrations who went to work. And I don't know, that's probably because my grandfather was whatever. Right? But that is circumstantial, not necessarily that she wanted to work or whatever. Give it a little time. Don't worry about the stat per se. I think what we need to more worry about is what can we do today? And what can we do today that is generational, not necessarily saying pull a person in. So a couple of simple practices we use, I can just add to that. One, any executive team in my office now, anybody in executive or in any senior leadership role, recruitment is got a mandate that I will not consider a single resume unless I have equal number of men and women resumes there. I'm not trying to say I have to have a woman, but I would say I will not consider a resume unless it's 50-50. And recruitment always comes back and says, well, it's so difficult to find women, and I don't care. That's their job, they're being paid for it. And if I have to wait an extra few weeks till I get equal number of resumes before I look at the candidates, that's what we're going to do. So that is step 1. 2, I forgot to mention this in my earlier thing. I talked about being proud about yourself. One other thing I've heard quite a few from women, and again, highly controversial, but I'll still make it for who I am. Many women, there is a lot of these corporates who have women programs, empowerment programs. You've got hundreds of these things. But women come and tell me, oh, I don't want to say I'm a woman. I'm like, seriously? I said, find me one man that doesn't use the fact that he's a man and can go to go drinking or doing whatever to socialize to get into management. If they can use what they have, why can't you just say you're a woman? What is it? Be proud about it. I'm not asking you to be promoted just because you're a woman. Don't take me wrong. I never do that. You should be promoted because of who you are. But it should not be because you just went out last night having drinks with somebody. And just be proud of that. Just be proud of who you are. And I'm sorry, I know I deviated from your question, but hopefully I answered your question. But the moment you start losing who you are and your identity, you completely lose it. Then you start questioning yourself. Don't do that. You're smart and good. I seriously don't understand. And I tell you, my executive team, and to your point, I had 0, and within a year I switched it around. And an executive meeting with women in the room is fundamentally different than men. I can speak for that. Or the boardroom. My boardroom has equal number of women right now in the room. Now, was it a little artificial for the first 2 years that I had to push it? Yeah, so what? Big deal. So was there a few men who bitched about the fact that, well, she got promoted for whatever, all those noises? That's noise. I don't care. But what is concerning to me is when that happens, women complaining is the problem. And they tend to pull the person down. And that is sad. Men will be men. They'll talk. Don't worry about it.
What you're saying is really a brilliant situation. I'm loud enough. It's a brilliant situation, but it's a drop in the ocean.
It is.
You said women should have an attitude. Women are not left for an attitude. They're considered to be, I wouldn't want to use the derogatory word, but it's not generally liked by women and men equally. If you say come out with confidence, how people perceive it in different ways is a big fight. Now, I think all of us have to go through that learning painful curve of people pointing fingers at us or not liking us because we have an attitude or we are pushy. There are many, many words that get used for us. Now, how do you think, as you said, it's going to take time. I respect that. But what can we, as enlightened women, do? And we are part of the problem, as you said. So what is it? No, I agree. I agree. We've all suffered. So our mums-in-laws and my mom told me, "Niche dekh, tu upar bahut dikhti hai, tu hasti bahut hai, tere daant bahut dikhte hain." And when you grow up with statements like this, you always feel there's something wrong when your teeth are showing. So we, it's at the back of our heads. So, you are very eloquent in this. Can you tell us a couple of things that we can do to change our mindsets and through that to change others?
So that's a great point. So I'll be honest. Is it a drop in the ocean? It is, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
The journey, I believe, is doing really well out west. And I fly across the world, and the sister knows live there, move all over the place. So I kind of see both sides of the world, if you may. And I've seen, like I said, building stuff like in Africa where, believe it or not, you guys are so high up compared to what happens to women there. So they are still where we were in India probably 100 years ago. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So at one point, I asked this question. I said, a broader question, not just about women. I said, why do Indians generally become servile in terms of how our attitude is? And we normally, especially out west, we tend to are better order takers. It's changing again, but we are better order takers than trying to be in leadership. We tend to do that a lot. Right? And I asked the question. It was my father-in-law who gave me a brilliant idea. He said, Hari, think about it. We've been ruled as a country for 10,000 years. It takes a little while to change, which is where my generational comment came. And I would use that and extrapolate the same thing to women. It's going to take a little while to change things to change, but we have to start somewhere. Which is why I said start within yourself. That's the best option. If you guys don't believe in it, and you come up every day, and I have women, I question the women, I keep asking them, but I'll give you a simple example. You already have a cool attitude, and the reason is, and I hate to say this with men in the room, but you guys, at least in our offices, you groom yourself better, you handle yourself better, you control yourself better. Your emotions are a lot better. Trust me, you should see, I have sent people home because, especially men, because they come up as if they're coming out with their 90s and just walk into their office. Now, why is that important? Because what it tells me is, if you can't take 5 minutes to be yourself, then do I need it? So keep that aside for a sec. Keep that at one point in a second. But what can you guys do? There's a few things. One, start pushing the women literally hard to believe in themselves. Tell them it works. I'll give you an example. And of course, I'm not going to name anybody, but I had two women, two wonderful leaders that I have on my team in India, here in Hyderabad. Believe it or not, they live in the old Hyderabad, or what do you call that, the Charminar side of the world. And they come in every day, they're fully in burqa, everything else, they're not, and they can't do anything. And then they come into the office, they get the chance to change whatever and come. I tell you, they're two of the brilliant leaders that I have. So one day I stopped them and I actually sat down with them and I talked to them. And they were talking about it. They said they literally don't have the ability to speak the moment they leave from here. They live two lives, literally two lives. So what we tend to do now is, now I cannot change society, that part of society, but what I did is made sure that every part of our facility has an option for them to change, to do everything else, do whatever they need to do to be who they are. I'm not just talking of clothes, but you know what I mean. I'm talking in the bigger context. So the question, and we took out any references to who you are or what you are from any kind of consideration of any kind. That's one. Two, for all of you in leadership, in women, push the women. It's easier for you to push. And don't let them pull somebody down. Let's assume, worst case, somebody's moved up because, some woman's moved up because there's whatever reason that he or she got a promotion. Try not to criticize. Try to encourage that and support that person. That is a big thing for you guys to do. Three, very importantly, that you guys can tactically do day in and day out is support the men who support the women. Because you need both sides. You're not going to do it by yourself. Neither are the men going to do it by themselves. Support the women. Support the men, which doesn't happen that often. We don't get a lot of support, I'll be honest about it. And especially if you see a leader, a man leader, a male leader standing up for something, support him. Especially when it comes to, that's the next thing you can do. And last but not least, help this attitude. Because somewhere, I understand culturally there is an issue, but the moment you're in a corporate world, tell them there is no end. I tell my daughter that. I have a wonderful daughter who's going to college. For the last 17 years of her life, I've told her, sweetheart, do what you want. I will support you, we will stand by you. And now she's going to come into a generation that is probably a little better than what you guys are going through. It will get better. I promise you it's going to get better. It has to get better. I don't think it's a choice. Because if corporate world, whether it's corporate India or not, has to move forward, we have to. But having said that, we have 1 billion people, and I worry about it every single day. How do I get everybody to believe in themselves? It takes an army. It's not me, but I can be one soldier there, but we need a lot. But as long as you guys have faith in yourself, especially leaders like yourself, if you can push, and you be the role model, don't hold your head down. Honestly, I hate anybody doing that, but that's not the point. Stand up. If you believe in yourself, now I get this criticism, trust me. If you think it's unique that women get criticized if they talk too much or whatever, trust me, I get it every day. I have some staff here, they'll tell you, I get that all the day. But that's where you need that. It takes a little, as we call thickness of the skin, it takes a little time to develop. So, remember, somewhere old in one of the movies had that, right? Logon ka kaam hai kehna, log to kuch hi kahenge, logon ka kaam hai kehna. They'll do that. Don't worry about it. So I'll tell you, I was so emotional wreck 10 years ago. I was much younger than I was today, naturally 10 years younger. But I tell you, maturity-wise, probably 50 years younger. But all I can tell you is every single thing like that, every comment would hurt. Because you're doing it with the genuineness of your heart. And it would hurt. It would hurt so much that you just want to step away from it. And I did many times. But then the only thing that told me is, I use this rule all the time, every single day, not just about women or anything else. Any decision I take, as long as it's ethical and legal, in a leadership role, it's going to be controversial, I know that. I cannot satisfy 42,000 people with anything I do. Even if I say tomorrow's a holiday, I'm sure there'll be at least 100 that's going to have a problem. And they're going to write an email, they're going to write all kinds of crap. It's all going to happen. But all I can do is believe in myself and say, I've been clear. And if I sleep well at night with a clear conscience, I know I've done right. Because anytime you cheat or do anything else, there is a problem. But I'll tell you, it starts with you. If you can support people like me, I think might be a little faster than a few generations. We might be able to skip one generation probably. That's all I'll tell you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Hari Kumar, for a very thought-provoking session.
There's one more question.
Real fast.
Hello, thank you. I'm from International Paper, APPM, and I'm a millennial working. My question to a leader such as you of an MNC is that now our workplace is as diverse as it can be. It has both the age groups, different age groups, Generation X, Ys, millennials, and also coming to genders.
And then you have youngsters like me.
Yeah, sure. So we have even men, women, and again, you talked about north, south. There are all sorts of races and differences.
Yep.
So coming to know that we are in a place like this, so from your experience of managing such a big MNC such as Deloitte, so from your experience, could you tell us what had to be changed, or in other terms, what you had to bring to the table? You talked one about the necessity of dressing rooms for such, so that is one such thing. So what things had to be changed for including women as such in such a diverse workplace as nowadays?
Sure.
And my second question, not to break the flow, and my second question is, what are the signs, the basic signs to look for when you're managing a company, or when you're managing your peers, or when you're managing your low workforce, to look for when you think the gender bias, or you can say the gender dynamics is going south? So what have you to look for? So these are my two questions.
So let me address the first thing. Dressing rooms, such things like that are operational. Don't worry about those. There's 100 different things we've done like that for men of disability, all kinds of stuff. Take that aside. There's a couple of big things you can do, and I heard a few of you as leaders. Here's a simple tactic I've done. About 8 years ago, Gopal, correct me if I'm wrong, probably about 8 years ago, here's what I did. So we have 141 businesses in India. So let's say I have 141, as we call service lines, leaders that report it. Come, our fiscal year is May, come sometime like June, they send me this massive Excel spreadsheet from each of this thing, giving me, like I said, promotion considerations and ratings and performance and you know what I mean, bonuses, etc. So here's what I did about 8 years ago. I had talent, or HR, calculate the number of high performers that were women, as we call it. We call it a 1, 2, 3 system, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 system as our ratings, 1 being the best. So I said, how many men got 1 and how many women got 1 in each of these service lines? Now, is that legal? I don't know. I can tell you in the Western world it's not legal to do that, but because I was in India, I got away with it, which is a good thing. Now, you know what? Let me take a step. So what I did is, I saw that number, and believe it or not, the first year our gap was huge. So you know what I said? I sent a note to all 141 of my leaders, and I said, I will not sign off on this till the gap is down. First year we had it as 8%. I said, unless you get me to 8%. So they said, how can we artificially inflate women? What can we do? I said, I don't care, which means the next year, provide opportunities for women to get to that 1. So if you're telling me women are not performing at 1, I know they are as equal or if not better than the men in terms of intelligence or whatever, which means they don't have an opportunity. And it was the truth. It's just because she asked that question. There were women who were forced to work 15 hours, which they cannot. They work 10 hours and they have 12 hours at home that they have to take care of, like I said, a big thing called husband or something else. So they cannot. So what I force the leaders to do through that is, you cannot do that. That's first thing that leaders, as you guys can consider doing that. And according to my legal team, there's nothing illegal about it in India to force that issue. So you can do that. That is one simple tactic you can do. The second thing I did is, when we did pay raises and bonuses for everybody, all these 42,000, as of 5 years ago, I took all names out. I told talent, you will send the spreadsheet to the leaders with no names on it. Simply what their performance is and what historically have they performed. And believe it or not, the last 5 years, my rule is 1%. If the delta between men and women are more than 1%, it doesn't get approved. That means the leader is not doing well. And I added each of the leaders into their direct goals that if that happens, it's their problem. Of course, when you have a metric and they have to hit, they're going to hit. They're going to be very cautious. But what that did is all of a sudden the leaders started thinking creatively. How do I give these opportunities to the women? How do I make them, because ultimately it comes down to opportunities. It's not about intelligence. Because you can fairly well assume everybody's equal. Does it make sense? So simple tactical things of what you can do. Some of the bigger things where you can shift quite fast and make people believe in it. And they saw it. Now I think 2 years ago was the first time we saw women where numbers were higher than the men. That felt good. Something had worked in 5 years, so that's good. Right? We did something. 2 years ago is when we shifted it, yeah. When I saw the numbers, I said, oh, cool, I don't have to. The thing is, they were so scared to come to me with numbers that were off, so that helped. So anyway, that helped. That's it. What is the second question? Sorry, I'll answer that. I know you're running out of time. Yeah, signs. So here's what I'll tell you. Anything that you feel, anything, this is my personal view, any word or sentence, all the way to any action that you feel in any way is abusive to you, and I use the word abusive not as physical or anything, even if it's not physical, it could be verbal, it could be anything, stop it right there. Don't have that relationship, have an honest conversation. If it's a decent company of any decent repute, they will listen to you. Do not encourage it, because the one thing I can keep telling you is, and even today there's enough problems, enough people that are problems, but it comes from you. I mean, I can't stop everybody, or we can't stop every single person. But the first thing, a few simple things I'll tell you. Any word, there is no HR gives this big book of whatever and whatever to say, not to say. I'll be the first one violating it, I'm sure, but that's not the point. But the big thing to understand is if you feel uncomfortable, and that's the better word than abuse, if you feel uncomfortable in any circumstance, stop it. Have a conversation, because the more you encourage it, it's going to go on. And it might get worse. And if you truly believe they're discriminating you, and you seriously believe that, not just because you believe I told you, first forget the word discrimination. Be yourself, and if you still believe you're not in the right fit and you can't do what you want to do, move on. Seriously. Thanks, everybody.